Just before we start, I'm going to say a little bit about where I come from. I'm from Wellesley, Massachusetts, like Rabbi Smith said. As commented correctly, Jewish people were not welcome there until a couple of years ago. When my parents moved there about 20 years ago, it was the first Jewish organization which was there. There had never been organized Judaism on any level in Wellesley until that point. And that's the type of community that it is. It's there are Jews, but they're very, very secular.
They wanted to assimilate, let's call it.
These are people whose grandparents didn't speak Yiddish. Just to give
They
a little
did, or they wanted to hide it.
So that's where I come from. I actually have a connection to Ukraine. This is not my first trip to Ukraine. I was in Ukraine 4 times previously, which is connected. The chief rabbi of Ukraine is actually my father's brother, my uncle. And as a result of that, I went to help out for Pesach the last 2 years. I've gone other times as well, help out for different things. And so obviously, as soon as we see Ukraine on the news, everyone cares about it and everyone's thinking about it. But so much more so, I was there a few times. I know people. I was there in the last year for Pesach. There's people I have a personal relationship with. I felt it was very important to go, but it's also obviously very dangerous, right? It's not a very safe thing to do, and I felt that I wanted to go, but I didn't really have any way to go. A few days before Purim, I meet my friend in the street, and he asks me, "I have a crazy question for you. Would you like to come to Ukraine?" And I said, "Yes. What are the details? What's the story?" So my friend actually grew up in Ukraine, in the city of Zaporozhye. I don't know if anyone is familiar with the map of Ukraine, but Zaporozhye is the southeast of Ukraine. If anyone's familiar with the city of Dnipro or Dnipropetrovsk, which is also a large city, it's about 2 hours away from there. It's about an hour and a half north of Mariupol, which has been in the news. I don't know, not sure how closely everyone is following the news, but that's been the ground zero of the most of the aggression from Russia is in Mariupol. So this is about an hour and a half away from there. My friend tells me, "Come, listen, his parents are the shluchim over there in Zaporozhye. They left a couple of weeks earlier. They fled the country together with many of the people from their community, but not everyone was able to leave. And there's still Jewish people there. There's what to do. Obviously, on a spiritual level, there was no rabbi in the city to read the Megillah, no one had read from the Torah in a few weeks over there. They had minyanim because 10 Jews had come to the shul, but no one knew how to read the Torah. So that was something that we'd be able to do, but also physical help, besides for the material help that we're able to give, medicine and food, also the knowledge that the emotional knowledge that people from outside of the country care about you and are coming and assisting, etc. That was also very important. So that was what he was offering me, and I jumped on the opportunity right away because, like I said, I had a connection over there to Ukraine already. This was the type of thing that I had to jump in. If I would have asked too many people for their advice, most people would have told me not to do it. And so, I went to the oil, which is the Rabbi Smith. Are people familiar with the oil?
You got to translate everything, not at length,
Okay.
but just to give a simple translation, because we have from the most knowledgeable people to newcomers. We've got all types. So
right. So I went.
Simple translation. The gravesite of the Lubavitch Rebbe.
Perfect. I went over there. I requested a blessing for the trip. Go there in peace, come back in peace, and hopefully to assist those who are there. And off we went. There's no direct flights to Ukraine, right? There's right from the first day of the war, about 6 weeks ago, there has not been any direct flights, certainly international, to Ukraine. So the closest place that we were able to go to was in Warsaw, in Poland. And we took a flight over there. It's interesting, on the flight with us, the flight was not very full. But when we were coming to pick up the luggage, the amount of suitcases and packages with aid for Ukraine was overwhelming. There were a few different Jewish, all the organizations that I saw were Jewish. I'm sure there were non-Jewish organizations as well helping. But on this particular flight, all the aid was coming from different people who were involved in Jewish organizations. Again, I spoke to some of the people over there. The majority of the people who are involved are people who historically have been involved in Ukraine, not only when there's a war, people who had been there previously and felt the need to come again in this time. And that was incredible to see, a pile of 25 suitcases of aid, waiting to be taken to the border. We took a car from Warsaw to the city of Lvov, or Lviv. The city of Lviv is on the border of Ukraine and Poland. It has special historical significance because it was the capital of Ukraine for, I think, only 3 weeks. But if I'm not mistaken, the Declaration of Independence of Ukraine was held over there, and until they were able to reside in Kiev, that was the capital. It's a very important city for Ukrainian nationalities. Incidentally, it's also one of the most anti-Semitic cities in Ukraine. But that was the entry point that we were able to go into. And we were going to take a train from that city all the way to Zaporozhye. And that was the plan. Now, the whole time, by every single step of the way, we were obviously checking the news. We were in touch with people on the ground, both in Zaporozhye, which is our final destination, as well as in Lvov. And along the way, if we hear that there's some serious uptick in violence, or the train is bombed, or something is going on, obviously we were not going to continue. It was pretty, it was intense. You had to make sure that we're not, every step, you had to make sure we weren't making the wrong decision. Just to mention, from this point, this is a little bit different than any of the other, anything else you've heard about or read about. They don't usually let in aid workers into Ukraine. Most of the aid which is being sent over there is by the border, either in Poland or Moldova or in Hungary. Very, very few people actually go into Ukraine because there's a war over there. It's not very safe. And even those who do, they're generally not going past 20 miles after the border. Maybe they'll be there to help refugees who are on the Ukrainian side of the border, but they're not really traveling into the heartland of Ukraine. So we get to the train station, and I don't have to, sure everyone's seen pictures and videos from of how it looks when there are people who are refugees. You have a train station in Lvov packed with people, old and young. Each person is holding a bag or a suitcase, sometimes only a backpack. And these people, this is all the worldly possessions that these people have. They're coming from somewhere else. They will not necessarily return to their house. And, I was thinking to myself then, I was only traveling for a week, right? And I have a suitcase. These people have their whole life over there. You have to make a decision what you want to take with you. Just, are you going to take soap and shampoo with you, or are you going to take a towel? Like these are the types of decisions that people are making when they're fleeing from their house. And that was when we got to the train station over there was the real first time when I really was able to feel that. Interestingly enough, so most of the people in Ukraine speak Russian. However, the national language is Ukrainian. This is due to the fact that throughout the whole time in communism, the law was to speak Russian, and therefore everyone did. However, the people really would prefer to speak Ukrainian, but not everyone knows it. It's just, it's not so easy to change the language of 40 million people overnight. So my friend who's from Eastern Ukraine, which the way it's kind of split up like that, in the East, people still speak Russian. In the West, people are speaking Ukrainian because as you got further from Moscow, influence of the communists was a little bit less. In the Chabad community, we know that because many of the members of the Chabad community back during the Soviet times fled all the way east to Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, etc., were over there. It was much further from Moscow. They were able to have a little bit more autonomy and able to practice Judaism a little bit more, obviously not freely, but a little bit more. So too in Ukraine, in the West, they speak Ukrainian. And my friend tried to buy us tickets to go to Zaporozhye, and he tried to order the tickets in Russian. And the clerk who's selling the tickets would refuse to sell him the tickets because he's speaking Russian. He explained to them, I'm from the East, and eventually they gave him the tickets. The train, we had no clue how long the train ride would take. The train ride typically takes about 14 hours, which is a while in a train car, in a seat. But due to the fact that they had to take an alternate route, usually the route goes through Kiev, and Kiev was not safe to go through, so we took an alternative route, and the train ride ended up being 23 hours. Just to share another story from the train station in Lvov. We were approached by a Ukrainian soldier, and he asked us to see our passports, which we gave him our passports. There's nothing wrong with us, meaning we weren't doing anything illegal, so it was all good. Before he stopped to continue on, he mentioned to us that he was actually Jewish. And we were able to fill in with him over there in the train station. So that was something, I guess, which is special as well. In the train car as well, sitting in the same compartment as us, was another Jewish person who is actually from Dnieper, which the train made a stop over there first. There was 19 stops before our city, so there was quite a few people who were coming on, going off, etc. But this guy was with us for the bulk of the time, and that was special as well to meet another Jew over there on the train. He was working with the Chabad in Dnieper, and what they were doing was they were driving vans to the Polish border, and then he would take a train back and then drive another van to the Polish border and just leave the van over there. So we finally arrive in the city of Zaporozhye. Zaporozhye is, like I mentioned, in the east, and it was at this point, the day before Purim. The people in the community over there were not aware that we were coming. A few people were, obviously the people we had to coordinate with, but we quickly sent out messages to all of the Jewish people in the city. They can come to the synagogue, and that was very nice. We were able to read the Megillah. Just for a little bit of context, according to halacha, according to the Jewish law, the Megillah must be read after nightfall, and there's a curfew going on because there's a war, and the Megillah would not be able to be read in the correct halachic time because of the curfew. And we consulted with some rabbis who instructed us to actually read the Megillah a little bit earlier. That way we would be able to fulfill the mitzvah with all of the people, and then read it again for ourselves later on in the correct time while we were at the place we were staying. The whole time, the whole Purim, obviously we were reading Megillah, etc., etc. But there was also there was evacuations going on. Like I mentioned, Mariupol, which is the city with the largest percentage of bombardment, even more than Kiev, city in the southeast of Ukraine. And that city was just a couple of hours away from Zaporozhye. And typically those who are fleeing from there, if they're coming to Ukraine, this is the city where they're coming to. And so there was a lot of coordinating with them. We had someone, his name is Oleg Margolin. He's a person who lives in Zaporozhye. Throughout the day, throughout the night, on the phone, making phone calls, calling people. We had to, try to convince a bus driver in Ukraine to take his bus and start driving across the country. It's not very simple. So there was all of this being arranged while we were there during Purim. By the way, if anyone has any questions, you can ask me while I'm talking. Just type in, and I'll be more than happy if I didn't explain something or etc. So we brought with ourselves a few suitcases. Obviously, we didn't bring kosher food because there's kosher food in Ukraine. Now, that doesn't really make sense because there's problems with food in Ukraine, right? But as much food as there's kosher food because Ukraine is a country which actually much of the matzah, for example, that we have over here in the United States on a typical year comes from Ukraine. They're a country which produces enough kosher food to sustain themselves. And so that was not a problem. But what is a problem is medicine and things like that, which are flown in usually or shipped in. And due to all the flights and all the ports being closed, that was an issue.
Are you going back to Ukraine? Are you going back?
God willing. God willing.
And what kind of medicine do they need most of all?
I can't answer that. We were just bringing it over there. We didn't actually.
You didn't actually see it.
I wasn't in touch with the people who needed it. There's people on the ground who are in touch with those who need it, and they were able to.
Okay.
I would guess antibiotics are the number one medication.
I do know that insulin for diabetes is something which was important. I do. That's something which I recall. But there's many different. Much of it is not even emergency or preventative medicine. Much of it is medicine that people take daily to keep their their sugar level or whatever it is. Different medicine that people in America take daily as well. That just over there is not available now. It's not necessarily.
Excuse me. Okay. Can I ask you, did you personally saw destruction of Lvov, or it's pronounced Lviv, or not? Because we have some friends who actually explained to us, because Lvov is like a mini Paris. It's one of the most beautiful cities that was built by Italian architects with amazing historical, museums and theaters and all of that. It's called Little Paris. That's how it's known in Europe. Did you see a destruction of buildings or areas that you were driving by as much? I know that Mariupol is completely destroyed, but Lvov is not. At least that's the information that we had.
No, I didn't see any major destruction over there.
Did you see any of the cities that is completely demolished?
No. We were in Zaporozhye itself. There were some attacks and some missiles which hit, but you have a city. It's pretty big. think about Miami. If you have a bomb or a missile in one part of Miami, 10 blocks away, you won't see anything, right?
Yeah, no, I understand that, but from whatever we see on the screen, it's just all we see is completely empty buildings, is broken windows, and nobody is in facilities. That's why I was kind of curious. If you were traveling through the city, you should have seen something similar to that. I know that some of the cities, we are from Belarus. That's why we're kind of keeping in touch with people who are from Ukraine. It's so close, and we have people who are kind of lived in both places. That's why we are kind of trying to find what is the real situation. It's definitely devastation without any questions, but at the same time, it's good to know exactly what's going on and not just to see the same videos on the screen.
Right.
Okay, in any cities that you visited, we know for a fact that Luzhansk and Mariupol specifically, I don't know what was the reason. It was probably the target for the Russian army more than anything else. It was just destroyed to the point where it's practically no place to live. But other places, I don't know. I would really appreciate if you will tell us what is your impressions about it. Thank you.
Right. So Mariupol is a coastal city, and it seems, obviously we don't know exactly all of the calculations of the Russian army, but it seems that what they're trying to do over there is they're trying to bridge the land gap in between Crimea and Russia, so they can be able to drive things through. That's what it seems like, and that's what it seems that they're trying to capture Mariupol. And the reason why there's so much destruction over there is actually because the Ukrainians are holding up. There are other cities. There's another city right over there called Melitopol, which is actually under Russian control. And because the Ukrainian army, I guess, either they gave up or they were defeated, whatever it is. So, for example, in Melitopol, there's much less destruction. Much of the destruction is as a result of, you're having a war in a city. That's that's unfortunately what happens over there. Your constant gunshots and bombs, etc., in a city. In Kiev, obviously, I'm sure everyone knows in Kiev there's a lot of destruction. However, again, I don't want to give the impression that every single house in Kiev is destroyed, because that's not the case. But even if every 100th house is affected negatively, that's devastating as well. These are not necessarily, we don't know if they're targeted or not. The claim is that they claim both things, so it's a little bit complicated. But regardless, you have someone who's living in Kiev. If a mile away a missile dropped, even if your house is intact, you can't continue living there until this war is over. You can't take the chance. We know in Jewish law there's a halacha called pikuach nefesh, which means that if life is in danger, everything else gets set aside. Because if you don't have life, what is anything else worth, right? So you're going to stay in your apartment, but then you end up, if there's a chance they're going to get killed, what's the point? Which is why, even though, we hope, obviously, that the war is going to end, but it's very important for, even right now, we're 6 weeks into this, approximately, and even now there's still buses leaving different cities, going towards the border, going to the Carpathian Mountains, which is a little bit quieter over there. I know specifically near the city of Uzhhorod, there are camps over there, where like refugee camps on the Ukrainian side, and that's very important. I know also there's a call center over here in Brooklyn, where on the Ukrainian clock, throughout the day, So over here, they start in the middle of the night because if you want to start at 7 a.m. in Ukraine, you have to start at 12 o'clock, middle of the night over here. They're calling different people in Ukraine and basically trying to convince them to leave. It's not very simple. It's not very easy for a person who has a life, etc., just to pick up and leave, right? It's people have things going on. As much as death is scary, you can't just leave. And so we have people actively encouraging people to leave, are reassuring them that there's a place for them where to stay. There's going to be food for them, etc. Either in the western part of Ukraine or in Poland, Moldova, Hungary, etc. It's important to note that men between the ages of 18 and 60 are not allowed to leave Ukraine, and obviously that is including all the people from the Jewish communities. And so it's not 50% of the population, or maybe it's 40% of the Jewish population. Whatever it is, it's a very large percentage of the Jewish population which are not able to leave Ukraine, and they're conscripted or they just need to continue life. That's just how it is. Sure.
My question is, were you in the cities that surround the city of Kiev?
No.
Didn't go there. The reason why I asked is yesterday or the day before, the New York Times published pictures and satellite images of dead bodies in the street. I thought maybe you were a witness to some of that.
No. I was not, Baruch Hashem. We took a detour on our way back to Poland. I took a detour actually 3 hours south. There's a smaller highway which travels 3 hours south, which we took to avoid Kiev because it was a conflict zone, and we were not looking to run into that. I did not see anyone get killed or any of that. We did see obviously many soldiers, tanks, missile launchers, I guess, and all different types of army equipment. But we did not see any actual killing. I'd like to believe that if that would happen, we would be able to go to somewhere safe.
It is interesting that you mentioned that you saw people who evacuated with just having very little baggage with themselves. It's definitely a wartime and they try to escape. But I wonder if any of our classmates were that 43 years ago, when my family left Minsk in a peaceful time, we were allowed to take one suitcase for a family of 4, and no food was allowed, crossing a border. And $90 per person, and that's how we arrived in the United States as a political refugees. And another really interesting part of it, that I have not seen too many organizations who were worried at that time how a family of 4 with 2 years old and 9 years old kids were traveling for 4 or 5 days on a train without any food. And actually out of $90, a glass of water that was supplied in the train cost us $1. That's what the machinist or whatever, the first steward on the train asked us to do. And exactly the same situation. We're supposed to, to leave a train because it was a military intervention. And we were, we left right before Warsaw, I think, is it? And it, right in the middle of nowhere, because they said that they're expecting a terrorist to attack the train because they knew that it's Russian immigrants. That's why it's definitely very touching it's really going right through our memory. But there are so many thousands of people traveled to Israel and America with practically nothing. In our situation, we didn't even have a passport. That's if something will happen, we were not protected by anyone because we were just status, without any status citizens. That's why it is definitely very scary. But my question is, and that's something that is very important for me to know, did you see any antagonism between Russians and Ukrainians inside of the country? Because there are so many Russians who are still living in Ukraine. And it's funny that here in immigration, there's such a fight between Russian speaking and Ukrainians, even here when it's not a military zone. Did you see anything like that when you visited Ukraine?
Right. So the people in Zaporozhye actually was very close to the Russian border. Many of the people over there are ethnically Russian, and I don't know what everybody is thinking, again, because the Jewish people who are living in Ukraine, in the past 30 years, they, just like the rest of the country, have slowly shifted away from considering themselves to be Russians to considering themselves to be Ukrainian, at least Ukrainian nationals. I do know of many people, the people who I know who come from Russia, they obviously are, they are with the Ukrainian side. I can't speak for everybody. I'm sure there are some people who are pro-Russia in Ukraine, just like but I didn't meet anyone like that. Anyone who I met, they look at it the way how we look at it in America. At least I'm not sure everyone on the Zoom, but the way how it's portrayed over here, there was one country who invaded a second country. That's how the people who I spoke to saw it, and that's what it seems like, at least from on the ground. We don't see any pictures or videos, at least then we didn't, of Ukrainians going into Russian territory. It seems like it's on the ground. It seems like it's just the Russians kind of going against the Ukrainians.
Thank you. Yeah, just.
So we were there in Zaporozhye from Wednesday, and we were supposed to leave Sunday morning. We had a chance to leave Friday morning, but we decided to stay for another 2 days in order just to finish things up, make sure that we didn't leave while there was still what to do. And on Shabbos afternoon, or Shabbos morning actually, we get a message. Someone walked into Shul, and they said that there is a curfew announced, a 2-day curfew from 4 p.m. on Shabbos. So through Monday afternoon, there would be a curfew, which our plan was to leave Sunday morning. Obviously, that was no longer possible, and instead we had to delay our time when we left. Now, over Shabbos, there was many different refugees came from Mariupol. Like I mentioned earlier, Zaporozhye is the closest city where people can go to, and they came to our city. They arrived actually in the middle of the curfew, so we were able to, we didn't go personally, but we were able to have it arranged for them to stay in a hotel until Monday. We were able to bring them food. And actually, Motzei Shabbos, after Shabbos finished, we were able to go. We gave out candies to the little kids. It's not much, but it was we had some candies around and we were able to give it, and hopefully that made a little bit of difference. Um, so we had now with us all of the people from Mariupol were not going to wait around in Zaporozhye. In Zaporozhye, there had been a few missiles, but many people were still staying put and not interested in leaving or not able to leave. You have to remember there are those who they have parents who are not able to move. The parents are not able to flee. If they have elderly parents and they are not interested or they're not able to just leave their parents over there. So they're tied down over there. Or you'll have couples who the husband is in between the age of 18 and 60. He's not able to leave. So his wife will want to stay with him. You have different situations where people need to stay. That being said, everyone from Mariupol who was able to leave wanted to continue with us to Warsaw. And we were able to take a coach bus with about 45 people to the Warsaw. Now we brought with us.
I want to just ask
Yeah.
you a quick question. Were
Sure.
you able to keep in touch with your family here in the United States while you were over there? Were you able to keep in touch to speak to your?
Yeah. Yes. There were different places in Ukraine which had interruption of service. We didn't have service everywhere. I don't know. Not sure if everyone on the Zoom has taken a road trip across the great country of America, but we have places in the United States which don't have service as well. So there were places where we didn't have service, but it wasn't, it's for an hour here, an hour there. It wasn't a big deal. In general, we did have service, and I was in constant contact with my parents, who obviously were very worried about me and trying to encourage me to leave as soon as possible. Okay, so we came with this bus of all of these people to the border, and there are different border crossings, obviously, right? It's a large border with many different countries, so there are many different border crossings, and we had people on the ground by the different border crossings who were able to tell us which crossing had the shortest line. By some of the border crossings, the line can be 2-3 hours long, right? So you don't want to go there unless you're forced to. So thank God, because of the infrastructure that Chabad has over there, small things like this are able to help. You have different people in different cities, and we were able to find out the most convenient border crossing, which we were able to go through. From everybody on the bus, there was no problem at all going through. We had two men, again, in between the age of 18 and 60, who we thought we might have a problem with. They are men who were born in Ukraine, made an aliyah to Israel, have Israeli passports, and had come back to Ukraine either to visit family or for a different reason. And they're dual citizens. And now they have to get back to their family in Israel. And this was going to be, this was a potential problem. We had to see what was going to be by the border. And thank God they were able to get through, and everything went as planned. When we got to Warsaw, obviously, as everybody knows, there are millions of refugees from Ukraine going westward to Moldova, Warsaw, Hungary, etc. And it's important to note that on the border and on the road afterwards, there were many different, it was full of people handing out food, clothing, toys, etc. to all of the different refugees, which was obviously very nice to see. many of the different local people pitching in and helping out. In Warsaw itself, there is a base, like a place where people can stay. You know, not everyone can stay in, in Warsaw itself. So what happens is the refugees come to Warsaw, and from there, they're directed to different cities throughout Poland, many to Germany, many to Israel. Each person has a different situation. Some people are not interested in going back. Some people, they come, they brought everything of value with them. They're ready to lose their house and most of their possessions, and they're planning on starting a new life now. They're not waiting for the war to finish. They're starting over. They're enrolling their children, if they have, in the local schools of a different community, and they're ready to start over. Others are not interested in that. Others are still hoping to go back, and so there's many different situations. And there is a team in Warsaw, which is still there until now, which is working out each person individually, helping them. When I was there only for one day after we came back from Ukraine, before we went back to America. And we helped a few families take a train to Austria. They had some cousins over there who were going to help them out. It's very, after you get out of Ukraine, it's very, very individualized. Some people are going to come to America. Others have cousins in England. Every single person is different. And there's obviously a lot of coordination over there.
You plan on going back?
Yes.
You know when?
I plan to go for Pesach. Yeah.
So Rabbi Bleich, were you very involved in trying to convince people to leave? Like some people might have wanted to stay for foolish reasons and you wanted to try to convince them, or you didn't find that?
So me personally, my Russian is not great enough to to try to convince somebody to leave. But my chavrusa, my study partner, the boy who I was with, was doing that, and I'm involved a little bit, but not to a great extent. But that is something which is still going on now. Trying to convince people to do that. Yeah, that is something very important. We know in Judaism, saving a life is very, very important. It says if you save one Jewish life, if you save one life, it's as if you save an entire world, right? You never know what that person can accomplish, or even if that person doesn't accomplish anything. Every single human being has unlimited value. So that's something which is obviously very, very important. I'll say another story from the city of Zaporizhia, which actually happened not while I was there, but 2 weeks earlier. The rabbi of the city, Rabbi Aaron Troy, who's been there for about close to 30 years, was driving in his car, and all of a sudden, there's many, many checkpoints throughout the city. Every 5 or 10 blocks, there's a roadblock with these massive blocks of cement and soldiers standing there. They don't stop everybody. They stop some people, ask them to see their papers. So Rabbi Ehrenshor was stopped, and immediately they ordered him out of the car and on the floor. And he was shocked because, Anyways, they started telling him that they're gonna kill him. Now these are Ukrainian soldiers, and so he asked them they were not interested in talking to him. Eventually, he had his passport with him. He has an Israeli passport, and he basically threw it at them and they saw his passport and they said, listen, we see your passport, but we're not convinced. We think that you're a Chechnyan. So I'm not sure if everyone is familiar, but the Russians had hired Chechnyan mercenaries to come to Ukraine to fight for them. And obviously us as Jews, we're familiar that a religious person, especially a rabbi, will have a beard. But in that part of the world, they associated the beard with the Chechens who are Muslim, and they had a special order to look for Muslims. And so they see a guy with a long, big, thick beard, and they thought he's a Chechnyan. Rabbi Aaron Shroy also happens to be about 6.5 feet tall, and he's a big built man. So that might help to their suspicion that maybe this is a guy who's fighting for pay. Anyways, eventually they took him to the police station, and as Rabbi Aaron Shroy is a public figure in the city, he's the rabbi over there. The police chief recognized him right away, and it was able to free him. So that was not a problem eventually. But after that happened, he decided that it's time for him to leave Zaporozhye and come to America. So that was also something which is
Did your uncle leave Ukraine? Your uncle, who you said is the chief rabbi of Ukraine?
So my uncle he was in America when the war had started. Actually, the Ukrainian government they recommended that he leave Ukraine about a week before the war had started. They said, listen, we think that things are going to become very tough. My uncle was very vocal, pro-Ukrainian, against the Russian aggression already from 2014. Most of the rabbis in the country have not been very involved in these different political different things, because that's not our job. Our job is to spread out Judaism and bring people in. Our job is not to say who's right and who's wrong. We are human beings. We have an opinion, but we're not looking to alienate anyone, etc. Especially, I can say from the city of not Kharkov, the city of Kherson, it's a city in the south which was captured by the Russians. For the past month, it's been under Russian rule, and over there, the Chabad house is running business as usual. There's a different country which is in charge now. I think they're using the ruble now in the stores, although I'm not sure. But if the rabbi over there would have been, pro the government, the Jewish institutions in the city would not be able to continue functioning the way they are right now. So as a result of that, most of the Jewish organizations have not, clearly aligned themselves in any way. However, my uncle, in Ukraine, you have to keep in mind that there's no separation of church and state, and so he's actually in the government to a certain extent. Obviously, he's a rabbi. He's not he's not a bureaucrat, but it's a thing which is connected to the government, and therefore it was important for him to be pro-Ukraine already from 7 years ago. And therefore, the government actually suggested that he leave before saying that if, God forbid, he would be stopped by any Russian soldiers, it might not end well, and they therefore encouraged him to leave. He went back since, obviously, to the border, and he's actually stationed mostly in Hungary, and traveling in between Hungary and the Carpathian Mountains, through different refugee camps over there, bringing things over the border, trying to bring people from Ukraine over into the Hungarian border, and that's where he's focused. I know now regarding Pesach, just coming up in a little bit more than a week. It's not obviously we hope that this will be over at the time that Pesach comes around. But even if it will be, the amount of destruction and chaos that will ensue for months after this is over, we can only imagine. And that's why, again, I was offered just last week to go there for Pesach. I was speaking to somebody from the community in Wellesley, where I'm from, and someone who cares about the community in Ukraine. I was aware that I went there before, and he actually encouraged me to go back, and I think that's the right thing. It's also important. I just want to mention what's going on over there in Ukraine. We've seen a lot of self-sacrifice. People who are not putting themselves a little bit in danger in order to help somebody else. That's what we've seen in Ukraine, and we've seen it in different parts of the world. Obviously, whenever there's a crisis, and we're here in America. It's very, very safe. That's what we feel like, at least. And who knows, it might be safe. But if God forbid something should happen, thank God we have such a network of Chabad houses and shluchim throughout the world that if anything happens anywhere, we have people who are there who are ready to respond. We have local contacts who can really, really try to make a difference. It's something which is incredible when you just think about it on the global scale. There's Chabad houses in more than 100 countries, right? And in the countries where there are more Jews, there are more Chabad houses than just one in the country. Probably 50 of the countries have multiple Chabad houses. Up to, in the United States, we have about 1,000 shluchim throughout the United States. And that's something very incredible that the Rebbe was able to project. Obviously, this is not the only reason, right? But this is a benefit that came out of this, that we have a response team everywhere. It's very important.
Okay.
Does anyone have any questions? Sorry?
I was just going to say the same thing. Anyone of our listeners want to ask anything? Sounds really exciting, really impressive that you were risking your life to a certain extent to help out others. It's a tremendous thing. Okay, any thoughts? Anyone want to share? Yes, Ben.
I don't want to share a thought. I want to ask a question. Are you familiar with the area called Volin?
Sorry, I can't hear.
With a Vav, Volin.
Volin.
Yeah. Volin is close to the Polish border. It's an area that always were a lot of Jews there in Ukraine. Mezrich is in Volin. If you're with Chabad, you should know where Mezrich is.
Volin is like it's not a city, it's more like a region.
No, it's a region, that's right.
Yes.
Have you been through there? Did you see anything through there?
No.
No, you didn't.
As far as I understand, it's a little bit more rural. As far as I understand, there's not that much going on over there.
A little more rural, and it was infected by Chernobyl, but it's not in a bad. It's cleared up mostly, so people are traveling there.
Right.
Rabbi Smith, you just may want to forward my email to everyone else, because there's some substantial information in the articles, and Rabbi Bleich's family could even his uncle or his some of his family members are probably quoted in the articles.
Okay, for sure. I will try to send everyone. the articles, and thank you, Robert, for looking it up. And
Sure.
Naomi also found an article about Rabbi Bleich, who's with us here, who has a whole article about his travels together with his friend Rabbi Aaron Troy. So maybe we'll forward that as well. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Rabbi Bleich. That was really eye opener. And we wish you a lot of hatzlacha. And it should be you should have a kosher and freilich and Pesach, and it should be a real Yetzias Mitzrayim. You should go out of your, all the limitations and have freedom. Okay.
Rabbi,
yeah.
I wanted to ask, I heard that Ukraine supplies 40% of the world's wheat. So regarding Shmura Matzah, how does that affect what's happening? Or how does what's happening affect that? And how does that affect what's happening?
Do you know, Rabbi Bleich, about the matzah bakery in Ukraine? Is that happening? Is there?
Yes. So the majority of the matzah from Ukraine, which got shipped internationally, has already been shipped before this started. I don't know the exact quantity, but I know that the last shipment of matzah, which was supposed to leave Ukraine to come, I think it was supposed to go to England, was not able to leave. It was stuck in the port of Odessa while this had started. And so there's going to be a little bit of a crunch, but Ukraine is a large matzah supplier, us here in the United States and other places around. But the majority of the matzah from Ukraine, which is supposed to be for international export, was able to leave.
Actually, I was asking regarding your ability to get matzah when you go back.
Oh,
there.
in Ukraine itself, the matzah bakery is functioning 100%. They usually leave the last matzah, which they bake over there for the local consumption, and they're able to function within the country itself. The only two ingredients for matzah are obviously flour and water. And luckily, the flour which they have is shmura matzah. Shmura, it's guarded. So that flour they have already for, you can't just buy it in the store. They have their own supply chains for that. And they have that already for a few months. And so, Baruch Hashem, they're able to, there's not going to be a crunch on that over there.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for joining us today, and a big thank you to Rabbi Bleich. We want to wish everyone a kosher and happy Pesach. I do want to mention, so we're going to be